that the risk of nuclear Armageddon right now is the highest that it has been since the Cuban Missile Crisis in 60 years.
Our country, too, has different weapons of destruction. In some cases, they are more modern than those of NATO. If the territorial integrity of our country is threatened, then to defend Russia and our people, we shall, of course, use all means at our disposal. I am not bluffing.
You hear the warnings, the noise, the demands. Are we living back in Cold War times? The topic of nuclear war has recently become more prominent. This should make all of us feel slightly uncomfortable as we know the potential consequences of such an event. But how much of Putin's nuclear threats are legitimate concerns or merely an act of desperation for current failures? What would happen to the US if Vlad decided to go rogue and launch a few ICBMs towards mainland America? Would America have the appropriate defense systems to potentially protect millions of people? A recent study by the American Physical Society on the effectiveness of existing and planned US systems for defending against intercontinental ballistic missiles found that current capabilities against defending an attack by a major nuclear power is low and will continue to be low for the next 15 years. Currently, the defense systems to defend against an attack have specifically been designed to protect against a small strike from a minor nuclear power. Hence, defenses against the likes of Russia and China would be much more challenging. The ground-based Midcourse defense, GMD, is the only system currently deployed to defend the continental US, with 44 interceptors based in Alaska and California. The GMD is a global system and has associated elements across 15 time zones, as you can see here. Put simply, after a nuclear weapon is launched, the GMD's ballistic missile defense sensors feed data into the GMD fire control system, which is used to launch a ground-based interceptor. Solid-fueled interceptors fly into the path of the incoming missile before releasing an EKV, which uses sensors to track and intercept the warhead by colliding with it, hopefully destroying it on impact. Although there have been recent successful tests of these GMDs, the study concluded that the overall performance of these tests have been uneven. Of course, we never truly know if this defense system will work unless it's actually used in real-life situation. As such, hopefully we never know the capability of such system. Of course, the most common deterrent to a nuclear attack against the US from Russia is the MAD doctrine. Mutually assured destruction between two nation-states, which clearly do want to have lasting empires, makes nuclear war highly unlikely. The MAD doctrine has been relevant and spoken about ever since post-World War II times and has so far seemed accurate, especially during the Cold War. An attack on the US seems unlikely. However, what about one on continental Europe? Recently, Putin said that this is not a bluff, a reminder that making first use of nuclear weapons is an integral part of Russian military strategy.
Our country, too, has different weapons of destruction. In some cases, they are more modern than those of NATO. If the territorial integrity of our country is threatened, then to defend Russia and our people, we shall, of course, use all means at our disposal. I am not bluffing.
Dmitry Medvedev, a former Russian president and the hawkish vice chairman of Mr. Putin's Security Council, recently said that if Russia were forced to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine, it was unlikely that NATO would intervene militarily because of the risk that a direct attack on Russia would lead to an all-out nuclear war. Would NATO and its allied states do anything if Russia used nuclear weapons in Ukraine? By escalating this nuclear threat, in combination with the annexation, Mr. Putin appears to have two goals in mind. One, to scare the US and NATO from direct intervention in Ukraine. NATO's General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg stated that, "What we have stated clearly is that there will be severe consequences, but we have not lined out or gone into great detail about what kind of consequences there will be." Obviously, Ukraine is not a member of NATO, and therefore is not entitled to the protection of NATO's nuclear forces. Stoltenberg, while emphasizing that point, also argued that Western powers cannot afford to be intimidated by Putin's nuclear threats due to the danger that a Russian victory in Ukraine could convince other leaders that they could achieve their goals by initiating wars of aggression. He further went on to say that this nuclear rhetoric and the threats that we have seen from Russia, the aim is of course to coerce us, to blackmail us, to stop providing support to Ukraine. But if we do that, then President Putin will win in Ukraine. Recently though, Emmanuel Macron broke ranks and said that he would not order a like-for-like retaliation if there was a nuclear strike in Ukraine by Russia. The French president said the country's fundamental interests wouldn't be directly affected at all if, for example, there was a ballistic nuclear attack on Ukraine in the region. This asks a question as to exactly how NATO and European countries would act if an attack occurred. Of course, tactical nuclear weapons would be more the ones of choice rather than those designed to obliterate cities. However, these small warheads can be as big as 100 kilotons, with 1 kiloton equaling 1,000 tons of TNT. In perspective, the bomb the US dropped on Hiroshima was 15 kilotons. Putin would be highly unlikely to target a Ukrainian city in an initial strike and would possibly avoid casualties altogether. If Putin decided to use nuclear weapons in the war in Ukraine, he would likely unify NATO and alienate his remaining friends in Europe. He would also turn China, India, and much of the world against him. He would also make many parts of Ukraine unlivable for decades, hence it seems highly unlikely. Putin is clearly willing to sacrifice many Russian lives to achieve and re-establish the Soviet Union back to its former glory. A nuclear weapons war would unequivocally destroy that goal instantly due to mutually assured destruction. Although we've heard much more noise regarding the use of nuclear weapons, Russia initiating such attack still seems unlikely, as it would literally destroy its current goal of re-establishing its empire. So far, Western governments have reportedly seen no evidence, such more trucks or trains appearing to move toward Ukraine from known storage locations, of Russian preparation for the use of nuclear weapons. For this reason, NATO defense ministers could merely continue to condemn the reckless and destabilizing Russian rhetoric regarding nuclear weapons. For some, this may suffice under the assumption the risks for Putin are just too high and the associated military benefits too low. At this moment in time, a nuclear attack still seems highly unlikely. However, the increased threats do make it a dangerous scenario where nuclear miscalculation becomes a real possibility.